The Pain of Detachment, a philosophical exploration of clinging, identity, and inner liberation.
Letting go sounds simple. It is often offered as a spiritual remedy, a mental health strategy, or a practical piece of advice. Detach, move on, release. Yet for most people, detachment is not only difficult, it's agonizing. Whether it's letting go of a person, a belief, a past event, or a future we hoped for, the very idea of loosening our grip on what we hold dear can feel like an existential unraveling. Why? Why is detachment so difficult even when we know intellectually that holding on is causing suffering? This video ventures into the philosophical roots of attachment, examining the psychological, existential, and metaphysical reasons why detaching is not merely an emotional hurdle, but a confrontation with the very architecture of our being. Attachment is the fabric of identity. At the heart of our difficulty with detachment lies a simple truth. We are what we cling to.
From a young age, we begin to weave our identity through attachments.
We identify with roles: daughter, son, friend, lover, achiever. We build meaning through relationships, goals, ideologies, memories, and desires. These become not just parts of our life, but extensions of ourself. To detach from something, whether a person, status, or belief, feels like severing a limb of the self. It's not just loss, it's annihilation of who we believe ourselves to be. In this way, detachment becomes less about letting go of things and more about surrendering pieces of ourselves. And the ego, whose job is to preserve the self at all costs, resists this violently. The ego clings to the known. The human mind is structured around the known. Even when the known is painful, it is familiar and thus psychologically safe. This is why people often stay in unhealthy relationships, stagnant jobs, or dysfunctional patterns. The fear of the unknown self, of life beyond the attachment, is more terrifying than the suffering of the present. Philosopher Soren Kierkegaard once wrote that anxiety is the dizziness of freedom. That moment when infinite possibility confronts the individual and the self recoils. Detachment presents this same vertigo. To let go is to face the open space of what now? And that space, empty and undefined, becomes a mirror too clear to bear. We are addicted not to joy, but to certainty. And detachment demands that we step into uncertainty, naked and unguarded. We confuse possession with love. One of the most insidious barriers to detachment is our misunderstanding of love. Love, in its purest form, is expansive, selfless, and liberating. But what most people experience as love is often entangled with possession, dependency, and control. We hold on tightly because we believe that closeness requires ownership and that love must be proven through attachment. But love does not die when we let go. If anything, it begins there. Detaching does not mean the absence of care. It means refusing to distort care through fear. Yet our cultural conditioning tells us that letting go is abandonment, apathy, or weakness. This false belief keeps us in emotional bondage, clinging to relationships and ideas that no longer serve our growth. As philosopher Khalil Gibran said, "If you love somebody, let them go. For if they return, they were always yours. If they don't, they never were." Detachment is not the end of love. It is its purification. Memory is a prison disguised as a shrine. Another profound reason why detachment is difficult lies in the way we experience time. The past is not just something we recall. It is something we inhabit. Our minds are constantly revisiting moments, replaying events, reliving losses, and redefining experiences. We memorialize the past with reverence, even when it haunts us. Memory becomes a shrine we refuse to leave. We believe we owe it to those we've lost, or to the people we once were, to keep remembering, to keep clinging. In this way, Grief becomes identity. Regret becomes ritual.
But detachment asks us to leave the shrine, to stop kneeling at the altar of what was.
Not out of disrespect, but out of deep respect for the present.
This too is difficult, because to detach from memory is to detach from the stories that made us.
It is to risk becoming new, a terrifying idea for a mind that has worked so hard to remain consistent. Society rewards attachment. We live in a culture that glorifies accumulation of wealth, connections, achievements, and experiences. The more you have, the more valuable you are deemed. In such a society, detachment is countercultural. It is seen as passivity, failure, or escapism. Even in relationships, there is pressure to perform attachment. Grand displays of devotion, constant contact, perpetual involvement. These become markers of care, even if they are hollow. To detach, to hold space, to step back, to release, can be misunderstood as indifference or abandonment. As a result, people remain tightly wound to things they don't truly need, because society has taught them that holding on is virtue and letting go is weakness. Philosophically, this creates a distortion in values. The inner life becomes secondary to external validation, and the courage to detach becomes buried beneath the fear of being misunderstood. We mistake detachment for disconnection. Another common confusion is the belief that detachment equals disconnection, that in letting go we must become cold, distant, or numb. But true detachment is not disengagement. It is engagement without entanglement. Detachment means you are present without clinging, loving without controlling, acting without obsessing over the result. It is a higher form of connection, one rooted in awareness rather than need. This form of presence is rare because it requires inner stability. It demands that we stop extracting identity and validation from the outside world. And this is a difficult task in a society built on comparison, performance, and reward. But when practiced, it leads to an entirely new way of being. Fully alive, fully free, and no longer bound by fear. Pain becomes a substitute for meaning. One of the darker truths about human nature is this: we often cling to pain because it makes us feel something. In the absence of clarity or direction, suffering becomes a surrogate for purpose. We wrap ourselves in emotional wounds, not because we enjoy them, but because they anchor us. They give us a narrative. They tell us who we are. I am the one who was betrayed. I am the one who failed. I am the one who lost everything. To detach from that pain means to detach from the story and the identity it gave us.
In this way, detachment threatens not just comfort, but significance.
It asks, who are you without the heartbreak? Who are you beyond the struggle? And for many, that silence is harder to bear than the pain ever was. Freedom requires responsibility. Detachment offers freedom. But with freedom comes responsibility, another reason why it is feared. When we let go of attachments, we can no longer blame others for our suffering. We can no longer hide behind what was or what could have been. We are left with what is, and our own agency within it. This terrifies people more than dependency does. Being attached allows us to outsource responsibility. We can say, if only they hadn't, or once I get this, then I'll be happy. Detachment removes these illusions. It gives you your power back, but it also strips away your excuses. This confrontation with radical responsibility is not easy. It forces us to see our role in our suffering and our liberation. The body remembers what the mind tries to forget. Even when the mind is ready to let go, the body may not be. Emotions are not just thoughts, they are stored experiences, imprinted in our nervous system, muscles, and breath. The body becomes a vessel for our attachments, holding on long after the mind has moved on. This is why detachment is not simply an intellectual process.
It must be embodied. To truly detach, one must feel the grief, the longing, the fear, and release them not just mentally, but physically.
This somatic unraveling is rarely discussed, yet essential.
Because what we cannot release through presence, we will relive through patterns.
And that is perhaps the greatest difficulty of all. Detachment demands that we feel everything first, then let it go.
The self is a process, not a possession.
Ultimately, detachment is difficult because it goes against the most fundamental illusion of all, that we have a fixed, separate, permanent self.
Eastern philosophy, especially Buddhism and Vedanta, teaches that the self is not a static object, but a fluid process, a constantly evolving field of awareness.
But we resist this truth. We want to hold on to me, to preserve continuity, to remain someone.
Detachment threatens this illusion. It reminds us that we are not our thoughts, not our roles, and not even our feelings. We are something more subtle, more vast, more impermanent. To truly detach is to let the small self dissolve and to trust what remains. That is not just difficult, it is radical. It is, in many ways, the death of who we thought we were.
Conclusion: the courage to let go. Detachment is not apathy. It is not escape. It is not avoidance.
It is courage. The courage to face impermanence, uncertainty, and change with open hands and a steady heart.
It is a return to the self, not as a fixed identity, but as awareness itself.
To detach is to realize that the world will keep moving, people will come and go, and everything you cling to will, at some point, ask to be released.
The difficulty is not in the letting go itself.
The difficulty is in believing we will be nothing without what we let go of.
But the great paradox is this: only in letting go do we find what we truly are.